Hello and welcome to this month's career series. Today we have with us Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. He is a distinguished fellow at Gateway House and a member of the India Indonesia Eminent Persons Group appointed by the Government of India. He is also a member of the Executive Council of IFTM University, the Governing Council of Asian Confluence and Advisory Committee of ASEAN Study Center in Shillong. As director of the Indian Council of World Affairs, he played a key role in strengthening India's Track 2 research and outreach activities. During a 37-year career in the Indian Foreign Service, he served as ambassador to Myanmar and Mexico and as High Commissioner to Kenya and South Africa. He has also been a senior research fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore. He holds a master's degree in political science from Allahabad University, and his book on India and Myanmar's relationship has received critical acclaim. Welcome, Ambassador Bhatia. So, how do you look back on your career today? Did it turn out how you expected it to be? Did you find it fulfilling?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for this opportunity. You started off with a very interesting question. I assume we are talking here about my diplomatic career. I spent over 36 years in the Indian Foreign Service. I retired from it 7 years back. So this is a good time to answer the question, how do you look back at your career? I think it has to be a very honest answer, and I have to say that I look back at my career with a great deal of satisfaction. The reason is that back in 1972, when I became a diplomat, I didn't really know very much about diplomacy. But then, as one grew up into this great profession, one scaled new and newer heights, and the level of satisfaction started increasing in a big way. Now, to be very specific by that, what I mean is, first of all, it was a great honor and privilege to represent a country like India in 4 different continents and in 9 different countries. So one lived in those countries over a long period of time. But more importantly, I also had the chance to handle important positions in the Ministry of External Affairs, and that gave a significant policy making or policy advisory role as well. But the most significant thing was the last 4 or 5 senior diplomatic positions in the career. I served as Consul General in Toronto in Canada, and then I was High Commissioner or Ambassador in 4 countries, that is Myanmar, Kenya, South Africa and Mexico. So it was a very good balance among Asia, Africa and Latin America. So in a way I can say that the reason why I feel so satisfied is that I managed to have a very broad and yet intensive regional view, broad global view and intensive regional view. Finally, I think perhaps I was lucky, perhaps the government recognized the value of my experience. So essentially, 3 years after my retirement, I was recalled by the Government of India, and then I served as a leading member of the strategic community, but you know about it.
Yes, of course. So, Ambassador, could you share with us your career trajectory and your experience in the foreign services?
Factually speaking, so the career can be considered the preliminary phase when I went to learn the French language in my first posting in the embassy in Paris. And that is where I learned not just French but also the basic lessons of diplomacy. Normally in our system, once you have done a good comfortable posting, you are sent out to a difficult or hardship posting. So from Paris I proceeded to Beirut, They claimed that the civil war was over, but actually, when I went, I discovered that it was fully going on. So there was a great sense of adventure, facing danger, and yet doing your work in a situation where the society was rather broken and fissured. So that was quite interesting too, Lebanon, that is. Then I came back to Delhi, and my second tour of duty took me to Brussels. That was exciting because one had the chance to deal with the European Union and deal with its relations with India. Brussels was followed by a very interesting and fascinating Asian country. I went to Indonesia. Jakarta was, I think, my longest posting. I stayed there for 4 years. It was a great country in terms of understanding the impact of India's historical, spiritual, cultural legacy on this country. And as you can see, the first three words are actually same between India and Indonesia. Came back to Delhi, and thereafter, as I had mentioned earlier, I had a long run covering those five countries, which, just to recapitulate again, were Canada, Kenya, Myanmar, Mexico, and South Africa. So 9 countries in all, a great opportunity to travel, but more importantly to understand the people, the cultures, and the work styles of these societies.
Okay. So, you were the Director General at the ICWA, a senior visiting fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, and now a distinguished fellow at Gateway House. Could you share with us your experiences as part of these think tanks and how you made the transition from foreign services to...
That's a good word, transition. In fact, it was a full-scale switch from being a diplomat or a civil servant to becoming a member of India's strategic community. What is the difference? The difference is that when you are a diplomat, you are representing the government and the country. You are explaining all the time the policies, you are contributing in a way to the making of those policies, and you are really loyal to the policies, to the government, to the country. But the moment you come into the strategic society, you still remain very much loyal to the country, but your point of reference changes. Now, as a private citizen, you begin to experience a greater degree of freedom, and you feel that time has come to be able to be courageous enough to criticize the government policy if there is a need. I did that, but I did that in a decent, gentle, constructive manner. That means if I felt that on a particular issue India's policy was not correct, then I did not stop at just criticizing it, but I tried to be constructive by offering some alternatives, by offering some suggestions, so that the policymaker who reads my analysis or who hears me speaking in a seminar or who interacts with me gets some additional value which comes from one's over 3-decade long experience in the government. So I must share with you that working with ICWA, earlier with the Institute in Singapore and now with Gateway House, I have a much broader and much deeper experience with the reality. When you are in the government, your intellectual frame of reference is very different. Perhaps it is narrow. But when you are a free citizen of the country, when your entire focus is on deepening your knowledge, on talking to people freely, the foreign scholars, the Indian officials, full exposure to the vast literature that is expanding on India's foreign policy, economic issues, you feel that you are much more grounded in reality. You feel that government policy is one facet, but outside the government domain, that is in the public domain, there is a lot of diversity of views which need to be factored in. So today, 7 years after my retirement, I feel that I have grown up into a more mature and more holistic person.
And finally, Ambassador, is there any advice you would like to give students looking to pursue a career similar to yours?
First of all, I enjoy doing that. I've been, especially in the last 2 years, traveling around the country. I meet the young generation of Indians. I feel very proud to interact with them. I feel very happy to talk to them. My advice fundamentally would be, and this is not that I'm preaching, but I'm answering your question. I think they have a huge burden of responsibility on their shoulders because they are belonging to a country which is different from any other country. It's not just that we are a big country, but we are a big country with a very long and rich past. So certainly our government and the government services, certainly the diplomatic service, needs some of the best and brightest young people of our country. The advice would be look at the option to represent India very seriously. First of all, it's a good career. It's a career which does not simply takes you to places literally, but it allows you to really interact with the elites of those countries as a diplomat. And as you go up, you are dealing with the best and brightest segments of those foreign societies. So the advice would be that if you really want to reap that fruit, you have to start working hard, because the competition within India for the civil services and particularly for the foreign service still remains quite stiff. But it is a journey which can be undertaken through hard work and through some kind of a broader view that by serving the country, by serving the government, by serving the people of India, we would be achieving a larger aim. Finally, therefore, I would say that when I say hard work, there is no shortcut to continuously acquire and expand one's knowledge base. Be thirsty, have an appetite, read a lot, and more importantly, learn from others and reflect a lot. That is what I would advise them.
Thank you for this, Ambassador. It was nice talking to you. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, and YouTube.